Hello, welcome back to my Sleepytime Reading channel. Today we're going to be reading a couple of articles from Good Housekeeping from 1888. We're going to start with one about flowers and then move on to a short little article about some home remedies. First of all, flowers. And this again is from Good Housekeeping from May 1888. While riding through the country in summertime, one often sees by the doorway of a miserable shanty a straggling rose growing in an old paint or nail cask. Still oftener, in village or city, through the dirty windows of an unkept tenement house, are seen whole rows of tin cans, decorated indeed, but with flaming tomatoes or sprawling lobsters, in which are trying to thrive sickly-looking plants, most pitiable proofs of how strong the love of flowers is, even with those living in the most adverse circumstances. Gardening without a garden may seem rather paradoxical, but want of garden or ground room is a serious drawback with many, who would delight in the cultivation of plants and flowers. To those who may be in this situation, I have some suggestions to make. Try an upland garden or a garden above ground. How? I hear someone say. Simply, my dear woman, by making a whole flower garden in boxes and pots. There is nothing neater and prettier than the common red earthen flower jars. But even to these there are objections. The large ones, when filled with earth and holding large plants, are too heavy for you to lift without help, and with help awkward to handle. Besides, as many as you would like for an upland garden would be quite an expense, for, because money answereth all things, you may not always have it to spend for coveted luxuries. You will find at the hardware, grocery, and drug stores wooden boxes of different sizes and shapes. These boxes, when nicely painted with strong iron handles on the ends, you will find inexpensive, cleanly, and comfortable to handle. First, select your boxes after fully deciding what and how many plants you wish to grow in them. You will need strongly made boxes, though they need not be made of heavy or thick boards. They should be nailed boxes, instead of being made with locked joints without nails. For sowing seeds, and for holding small pots, shallow boxes you will find useful. But for regular plant boxes, the smaller ones should be 7 or 8 inches deep, and the large ones from 10 to 12. This depth will secure room for deep drainage, more imperative in boxes than in the earthen flower jars. After you have bought or begged your boxes, you will need to buy a good, though not large, paintbrush, and a can of prepared paint, also a bottle of turpentine, some iron handles, much like what are used for kitchen drawer pulls, a few round iron nails with flat heads, a good-sized gimlet, and last, though not of the least importance, hunt up a pair of old kid or leather gloves with long wrists. You are now ready to begin the painting, which is best done on a clear day. Before painting your boxes, make a few gimlet holes in the bottom of each box. Choose a room or a place to work where your painted boxes can be left to dry. When you have a shelf or table on which to stand them as soon as they are painted, you are all ready to put on your gloves and button them as carefully as for a dress party, for you will find paint most provokingly insidious. I quite forgot to tell you, or rather to ask you to desist, however strongly you may be tempted, from buying red paint in any of its alluring shades. Burnt umber is a good color, not only wearing well, but pleasant to the eye, and the rich, handsome brown blends so well with the different shades of green, and also with bright or pale flowers. Now we have the color settled beyond question, we can proceed to open the can of paint, which can be done with a can opener or an old vegetable knife. A deep plant saucer is a good thing to mix the paint in, which you will do by first dipping out a small quantity of the thick paint, and make it the right consistency by adding turpentine a little at a time, constantly stirring until very smooth. Dip your brush in daintily at first. You will soon get the knack, even if you have never taken lessons in painting, and surprise yourself that the whole job will be so quickly done. After a few days drying, add a second coat of paint, painting the top edge and for an inch or two down the inside. When well hardened after the last coat of paint, Fasten the handles on to all the boxes that you think cannot be easily moved about with one pair of hands. Now you can plant your garden, if you have provided yourself with suitable soil and plenty of good light drainage. Broken crockery, oyster shells, which of themselves furnish a little plant food, and a generous share of charcoal. Be careful that your soil is neither too cold nor sodden. You would better wait until the sun has well warmed and dried it, then you can rub it through your hands or sift it, which is perhaps the best way. Heliotrope. Whatever, my dear woman, you have or fail to have in your portable garden, be sure to have one of your largest boxes filled with heliotrope. For this, you will need very rich soil or some good fertilizer applied often enough to ensure luxuriant growth. Such clusters of flowers as you may have by midsummer, if left to grow naturally, is such a graceful plant, to say nothing of its wonderful fragrance. Mignonette will thrive well in boxes, as it does better grown where the seeds are planted. It will hang prettily over the edge of the box, and though it has no striking beauty of form or color, its sweetness compensates for both. In the same box with your mignonette, plant a few flax seeds broadcast, and its light foliage and small delicate blue flowers will contrast well with the mignonette. Geraniums, some of the sweet-scented varieties, have very lovely bunches of flowers, which, with their fragrant leaves, are of the greatest value. Bone dust, or something of that nature, will be needed to make them grow in the greatest perfection. Fish geraniums, there is no question about these common plants. They are too well known to need any praise. If you have a good supply of heliotrope flowers and a little bunch of mignonette, any color of geranium, will, if well arranged, show to good advantage either in your garden of boxes or when used for indoor decoration. There are now double dwarf growing geraniums with white, pink, and also with very dark flowers that will doubtless give more real satisfaction than any plant of the same money value. Strong, rich soil and not much box room, and you are quite certain, if you water freely, to have flowers in abundance. Agapanthus is a most excellent plant for growing in large pots and boxes, of which there are several varieties. One with flowers of a rich, unusual shade of blue is more common than the others, sometimes called blue lily of the Nile. A very rare and lovely variety has flowers of white, with a distinct stripe of lavender through each petal. These flowers are borne in large umbels, and with stems on each single flower long enough to pick for small bouquets, and if each flower is picked before it fades, the plant itself will remain an object of beauty for weeks. The leaves of this variety are more graceful than can be described, curving from the center of the plant, and worth growing if it never flowered. A small root of Agapanthus is not sure to flower before the 3rd year, but as it will live in the cellar or adorn any window in the house, it is worth waiting to see it throw up flower stalks of a yard high, crowned with quantities of delicate flowers. They require ample root room, but if given good soil and room enough for their large, white, horny roots, they are satisfied with very little attention, although always grateful for a sponge bath and a refreshing drink. Amaryllis is another desirable plant, very old-fashioned, but always handsome, with its stalks of rich, bright, lily-like flowers late in the summer, and its dark, glossy leaves. This plant can also be kept in the cellar through the winter. A box of sweet herbs, if one has not a garden, and is a housekeeper, a few sweet herbs will be a very great convenience, besides saving a good many pennies. For summer use, or to use green, a few seeds of parsley and sage will give all the plants needed, and thyme, both plain-leaved and also a variegated, golden, glossy yellow, and dark green variety, are both very pretty plants, and either green or dried, the leaves are prized as a seasoning. A box of lettuce and pepper grass you will find the easiest culture, and with its growth you will have a sense of safety in case of an emergency, and you have also a box of small growing nasturtiums. You will never be at a loss to know what to pick for your dining table. The small juicy stems and likewise the small seeds of the nasturtiums are good mixed with the lettuce, and the rich, brilliant colored flowers always handsome anywhere, but especially on the dinner table, in small or large bunches. Scarlet Runner is a clean, pretty ornamental vine, and a great favorite in European gardens. As it possesses so many charms, It is a wonder that it is not more common. It will grow in a sunny, rich bit of earth to a height of from 10 to 15 feet, and covered with dazzling flowers from July to October. Last summer, a bean planted in one corner of my box of Agapanthus, which stood by my doorstep, made such rapid growth that from early summer until frost came, our doorway and portico were covered with the showy, dark green vine with its bunches of fine scarlet flowers. O'Reilly was right in saying, "They is growing while you're on duty. The flowers are the right soldier's color, and when it comes to the beans, ye may put your hand out of the window and gather them, and no trouble at all." Domestic Remedies, a valuable little dictionary to be posted on the door of the household medicine closet. Ginger. Essence of ginger, a very good medicine to have in the house. It is a warming stimulant to the stomach, and aids greatly in flatulent colic. Dose, 10 to 40 drops in hot water. It may be applied outside over the stomach and bowels, wetting a piece of thin flannel well with it, laying it on and covering with several thicknesses of flannel to prevent too quick evaporation. Ginger tea is an old-fashioned stomach warmer. Do not boil aromatic teas or other preparations, because that would drive off their volatile oil, which is their active principle. Glycerin, a sweet, transparent liquid obtained from fatty substances. It is principally used externally. It abstracts water from the tissues, and for this reason should not be used pure, for when applied to the hands and face, it will make the skin rough. Adding equal parts of rosewater makes a very nice preparation. Glycerin and borax mixed make a good paste to put upon sores in the mouth. Gum arabic, a soothing, not nourishing material for a drink in cases of irritation to the throat and stomach. Dissolve a tablespoonful in half pint of warm water and let it cool. Witch hazel. Its most important use is in the treatment of sprains, bruises, excoriations, cuts, burns, ulcers, and bites or stings of insects. It restrains hemorrhage and allays pain. Heat. Warm applications possess a high degree of utility in various painful and inflammatory affections of the abdominal organs. Dry heat is a very important remedy in sudden and alarming depression of the system, with feebleness of the heart's action, and coldness of the surface, also in toothache, earache, neuralgia, and chronic rheumatism. Dry heat may be applied to any part by means of woolen cloths, bags of salt or bran, sad irons, bricks, etc., heated to the proper temperature. Bottles of hot water, see that the corks fit tightly, have them well wrapped so as not to burn the patient. Apply moist heat by poultices, flannels wrung from hot water and well covered, or a bag of hops dipped in hot water. Hoffman's anodyne, compound spirits of ether, a stimulant to the nervous system. It is useful in weakness and palpitation of the heart, fainting, and asthma. Dose, 20 drops to a teaspoonful of water. Hops. Tincture of hops, a mild hypnotic or sleep producer. It is a stomachic tonic, as serviceable in dyspepsia, flatulent colic, and mild diarrhea, as many more rare and costly medicines. Dose, 1 teaspoonful thrice daily. A hop pillow is sometimes used for sleeplessness. To prepare it, fill a small pillowcase with hops, which have been sprinkled with alcohol to bring out the active principle. Huxham's tincture, a preparation of Peruvian bark, a good tonic in feeble conditions of the body, convalescing from fevers, etc., and a lowered tone of the system from overwork in the summertime. Dose, a teaspoonful 3 times daily in water, a short time before each meal. Iodine. Tincture of iodine is in universal use as a counter-irritant. It is painted over the throat with a camel's hair brush in acute attacks of sore throat, and to the chest to relieve pains. It is serviceable applied to superficial inflammatory swellings. As the susceptibility to the action of iodine varies in different persons, it is always prudent to make a slight application in the beginning. If extreme burning follows the applications, it may be dissolved off with alcohol and cosmoline applied. It's the end of that entry of domestic remedies. Hopefully I don't need to tell you that these Remedies are probably not the best thing to use these days. Some of them may actually be poisonous or cause other diseases, and you should probably check with your doctor and modern day medical literature before you attempt to use any of these. To round out this entry of Good Housekeeping articles, I'll read a couple of letters from the Cozy Corner. In this corner, we propose to have pleasant gossip with our readers and correspondence in passing matters of household interest, and that it may be made an instructive and profitable household exchange, we invite correspondence or inquiry and information on all subjects of general interest and value to the homes of the world. We have several contributions for our Cozy Corner department every way worthy of publication, which do not appear for the reason that the names and addresses of the writers are not given. Only such contributions will be printed in any department of Good Housekeeping as are accompanied by the name and address of the writer. Making and cooking omelets. Editor of Good Housekeeping. Will someone kindly give in the Cozy Corner some receipts for making omelets and tell how to cook them? I think others as inexperienced as myself may need such also. I could not get along without Good Housekeeping, as it is a constant help to me. LBL, St. Louis, Missouri. Buffalo bugs. Editor of Good Housekeeping. Believing buffalo bugs to be a subject of great interest to all readers of your welcome magazine, I would like to give a little experience with regard to the beetles referred to by Mrs. Gamwell. Last May, while visiting a friend, my attention was called to a tumbler turned over a few pieces of soft flannel, the whole resting on a square of board. Looking through the glass, I saw 4 lively and well-developed beetles. On asking an explanation, my friend gave me the following account of her pets. While house-cleaning the fall previous, she found 4 full-grown buffalo bugs, and wishing to know what finally became of them, she determined to watch. A home was arranged for them under the tumbler, and they were left to their own devices. As a result of her experiment, she had 4 skins, such as all housekeepers are familiar with, and 4 beetles. As it was impossible for the bugs to escape, and equally impossible for anything to get beneath the tumbler, the answer to the question of what became of the 4 bugs is simply this: 4 bugs equals 4 beetles times 4 skins. During my stay, we watched the tumbler very closely, and at length discovered eggs, very minute particles, something like grains of red pepper, and which, when crushed, leave a red or brick-colored mark. After laying the eggs, the beetle's work is done, and death seems to follow. Now, having found these eggs in my own house, I know the rest of the process. A small white louse is the next stage, then a dark streak down the back appears, followed by dark stripes on the sides like ribs. Then, though very small, they turn the well-known dark brown color, and from this soon pass into that most abominable of all pests, a full-grown buffalo bug. I have found them in all stages, and during the month of September the white and slightly marked ones are the most numerous. If these can be disposed of, and the beetles cared for in like manner, the number of bugs to be looked after will be decidedly less. I feel that my experience certainly adds truth to Mrs. Gamwell's statement that it is very important to kill the beetles. The common ladybug is, I am quite sure, often mistaken for the beetle, but there is a decided difference between the two, the ladybug being larger and brighter colored. The uniform color of the beetle is black or dark brown, well covered with white and bright spots. Although Miss N. quotes high authority, I cannot regard the beetle as such a useful member of society, and my conscience does not trouble me as having sacrificed innocent victims, while my peace of mind with regard to my rugs and carpets is certainly greater than if these same beetles were allowed to roam over my house at their own sweet will. M.J.P., Worcester, Massachusetts. Bread making and clean hands. Editor of Good Housekeeping. I notice in the Cozy Corner of Good Housekeeping for March 31st a letter by Reggie on dish towels and bread making, in which she deprecates the use of one's hands in bread making. It is well to be as neat as possible in this world, for even then we shall find our share of the dust from which we possibly have been evolved. But being too fastidious is a different trait. I certainly agree with your hope, Mr. Editor, that Reggie does not have to eat often away from her home. I want to disagree with her communication. In my experience with bread making, I've never discovered that my hands were any cleaner or whiter after kneading the dough, after I'd washed off the flour which clung to my hands, Therefore, I think it is a cleaning process or a whitening process only so far as the flour is absorbed by the pores of the skin. If the hands are thoroughly cleaned, nails included, before the work is begun, then rubbed well with flour, there is no occasion for the bread becoming impregnated with the substances foreign to itself, provided the worker understands her work and is reasonably careful, although if one prefers machinery in making bread, it is doubtless well to use it. E.L.M., Manchester, New Hampshire. Beet Biscuits, editor of Good Housekeeping. Mrs. A.C.S. of Kalamazoo, Michigan, asks in your cozy corner, March 31st, for a receipt for beet biscuits. I send one that has been in use nearly 100 years in our family in Virginia. 1 quart of flour, in which a teaspoonful of salt has been sifted, 1 tablespoonful of butter and lard mixed, half a pint of sweet milk, or, if butter and milk is not abundant, 1/4 pound of sweet, firm lard, with a pound of flour, down weight, and 1/2 pint of cold water, makes, well worked and baked, a delicious biscuit. Sift the flour with the salt into your mixing bowl. Chop into it with a sharp knife the shortening. Add by degrees the milk or water until it forms a stiff dough. It must not be so soft as in bread risen with yeast. When well worked, turn it into your machine and work it for 20 minutes by the clock. In that time the dough blisters. Then break it off in small bits, taking each one into the fingers. Work them into shape, put them into a baking pan. Prick them with a sharp fork and bake in a hot oven, one much quicker than for bread risen with yeast. For success with these biscuits, the shortening must be firm, kept in a cool place in summer until needed, the oven quick, and lastly they must be worked out and shaped by hand. They are sometimes, to save time, cut out, and are thus formed by those who object to hand-working for any bread, but the result is inferior in every way. This hand-working is an art, awkward at first, but worth the trouble to acquire. My first biscuits were so shockingly misshapen that I was in despair, until an observant child of 6 exclaimed, "Grandma, you must work it out with a little pigtail at the back, then press that in." This accurate description gave just the needed information. Now for the machine. It is in box form. 2 grooved rollers run across a box with a crank for turning it. This box is screwed to any table. Flour both box and rollers well before using. Put the dough in between the rollers and turn forward and backward for 20 minutes by the clock. A top to this box is a much-needed addition. Any carpenter will put one on for 50 cents, and the benefit will be appreciated by neat housekeepers. Beet biscuits in perfection came in times past out of Dutch ovens, with their lids covered by glowing coals from a wood fire, while they rested in a bed of the same. The modern stove, however, produces a very fair substitute, and we must rejoice in the relief it affords to toiling women. C.H.G., Richmond, Virginia. And there you go, another batch of helpful household advice from Good Housekeeping magazine from May of 1888. And we'll move on with a little more next time. Thanks again for checking out my Sleepytime Reading channel. Let me know what you like, dislike, or want to see more or less of. And if you'd like, click the subscribe button so you don't miss any of the different readings that I do. Thanks again. Bye.